Hey guys, welcome back to the Joy of Wrenching. I'm Les, your friendly neighborhood mechanic, and today we're going to do the transmission fluid and filter change on this 2021 Porsche Cayenne. It's the 3.0 V6 with the turbo. Yeah, it's the big fast one. Anyway, there's not a lot of data out there on transmission fluid and filter changes for these late model, whether it's the Porsche or the Audi or the VW or whatever that has the ZF 8-speed transmission. So I want to change that today and show you how to do it. It's still possible to do this by yourself. I'm going to show you how. I'm going to take you through it step by step. So you're going to need a few special tools, but we'll get into that. And I bet you guys will be able to save yourself a ton of money after you watch this video. So let's get into it. Okay, so some of the things that you're going to need, obviously, the filter is part of the transmission pan on one of these ZFs, and so you're going to need to get a new filter / transmission pan. And the fluid that it takes, in this case, is this ZF Lifeguard Fluid 8. Okay, make sure you get the right fluid. I got this stuff from FCP Euro. I'm not sponsored by these guys, but they do a great job of giving good quality parts and everything as part of a kit. The cool thing about using them is they've got good quality parts that are going to have the magnets that you need in them. They're going to have the O-rings. They're going to have a good fitment. And as you can see, they also include new pan bolts and a new fill bolt. So good stuff to have. In addition to the filter and the fluid, you're going to need some kind of a code scanner or scan tool that can get to the transmission control module and show you the transmission fluid temperature. That's a real important thing to keep track of when you're doing this procedure. So one more tool that I want to mention you might need, you're probably going to need, especially when working on these European cars, is going to be Euro triple square sockets or bits. Okay, they kind of look like a Torx bit, but they're just more points. Okay, you're going to need these things in order to work on pretty much any European car these days. So get you a set like this. I'll put a link in the description to these parts and things like that. Again, I'm not sponsored by these, just showing you the stuff that I use to make the job easier. All right, first step, you're going to want to jack up your car, put it on jack stands, get it nice and level. I'm going to use my lift here so that I can show you guys all the nitty-gritty details. But what you'll find on many of these cars is they'll have some kind of underbody protection. And so you'll need to remove these panels, and they're just held in with a bunch of T25 screw heads. So just get you a T25, go around, buzz all those things out, and then drop these panels, and that'll give us access to our transmission and other portions of the transaxle here, including our transfer case, and of course the rear differential back here, which you don't need to drop those trays for that, but we'll get to that. And then also the front differential, which is hidden under here. All right, so now that we've got these belly pans out of the way, you can really start to see what we've got to do in order to get to our transmission pan. Also, in order to get to the front differential on this vehicle. And like many of these European cars, there's going to be some bracing in the way of getting to the pan so that you can drop this pan. There's this cross brace here that goes in front of the pan, and then you've got some pan bolts that are hidden by this transmission cross member here. So a little bit to get to, but it's still very doable. Don't get too intimidated. I'll take you through it one step at a time. So in order to get this cross bracing out of our way, we're going to need a few different tools to pull this thing down. It's held together here in the back with these 4 bolts. These are 18 millimeter regular socket. Okay, then you've got a bolt here, another one on this side. Those are the triple square Euro again. This is size M14, 1/4. Okay, so you're going to need that to get in there, loosen those. And then in the very front here, you'll see these 3 screws. Those are also triple square Euro. These are M10. M10. So you're going to need that as well. And I'll go ahead and pull that thing down. All right, so let's get started with the hardest bolts probably, and those are going to be these M14s. There's one on either side here. You're going to need a breaker bar, and make sure you got the right size bit because these things are tight. Here we go. Okay, I broke those loose. Now we can control, or we can move to some sort of electronic tool to get that loose. These M10s here at the front, I'll break those loose. Those are not tight at all. Not too bad. Now let's check out the 18s here on the back. What kind of torque did they put on these? Those are tight too, so I'm going to get the breaker bar for those as well. There we go. I hope you eat your Wheaties, because these things are on there nice and tight. We'll have to remember those torque specs when we go back together, and I'll give you all those. Oh, this plate's kind of heavy, so you don't want to drop it on your foot, especially if you're a fool like me wearing flip-flops. There's a good idea. Bag and tag all your hardware. That way you know where it goes and you don't lose any of them. All right, so that really cleared up the space quite a bit. Now you can see we have pretty good access to the front of our transmission pan here, and we're going to need to do something with this bracing back here for the transmission to try and get to the bolts that are at the very back of this pan holding it on. But we've got good access to all of these bolts, just not the ones in the back. So we're going to have to do something with this cradle here. And it looks like there's another belly pan piece here that's going to have to come out of the way as well. This one appears to be held in with some kind of a push clip here that probably can pull down and come apart. I'll show you that here in a minute. All right, let's see if this just kind of pulls out like a normal push clip or not. All right, there it goes. Yep. Boy, that's a good size push clip, but that's the way it works, just like the other. Just pull the center down and away she goes. And that'll just give us enough freedom there. I don't know if we want to completely take it off. If we do, looks like there's a little 10 mil here and here to hold that on. So I might as well get it out of the way. We'll go ahead and take these 10 mils off of here and get this little piece of this pan out of the way. No need having stuff in our way. It's a little bit tricky to do with one hand, but all right, so we're getting down to the nitty-gritty now, guys. So here's our transmission pan again. We've got some wiring harnesses that kind of go around and tether to it and go underneath it. We've got some this transmission support here, which is covering up the back few screws to the point where there's no way to get in here, to get to them and loosen that pan. There's just no way to get up in there. This has got to come down. And so as you can see, if we're going to move this down, then we're not going to have anything supporting our transmission when we do that. So the manufacturer says to put a block of wood here underneath the transmission pan and jack up to take the weight of the transmission when you remove this cradle. We need to then remove this pan, but if we've got a block of wood and a jack here holding that transmission up at this point, then how are we going to get that down? So what I would suggest is that you try to support the transmission from somewhere here near the back. This being the transfer case, there's not a lot of meat here in order to support it on the transfer case, but you've got this donut that connects the transfer case to the rear drive axle and the axle itself. Now, there could be some danger in supporting it from the axle itself, because worst case scenario, I guess if it weighs a ton or you put a ton of weight or pressure on it, you could somehow bend this axle. We're not going to do that. But I do think I'd like to get under here. And if you're going to do the transaxle, this transfer case fluid, the drain plug is down here and the fill plug is up here. And so having this plate out of the way is going to be important for both. And so I'm going to go ahead and remove this plate and then see what we have to support the transmission while we remove this transmission cross member. All right, so in order to get this little shield off of here, we're going to have to remove 2 retaining bolts. There's one on either side. See back here, the silver one there. Those are M10 triple squares again. So M10. There's one on either side, and then we'll remove this little plate. There we go. Now we've got good access in here to see what we can support with our transmission jack. And it looks like this right here, this donut. Oh, that's some serious beef right there. So I think I'm going to put my jack here. That way I can take the pressure off of the transmission safely, not bend my drive shaft in any kind of goofy way, and then I can remove this transmission cross member. All right, so here's my setup. I've got the car up on jack stands, or in this case on a lift. Got a jack, this case a screw jack, up underneath here, rested on the bottom of our donut here. And let me put a little bit of pressure on it. And as I do so, you'll see the transmission kind of lift up a little bit. So that tells us that it will take the pressure, or at least take the weight of the rear of the transmission just fine without squishing the donut, without distorting anything here. It's not going to cause any damage. Just be careful when you put your jack under here that you don't squish your transfer case control module here. All right, so let me show you what we're going to have to do in order to get this transmission cross member off of the transmission. So it is bolted to the car in a few places with, again, the Euro triple square. Of course, they can't use the same size that they used before. This time it's an M12, 1-2, M12. So you're going to need an M12 for these 1, 2, 3, and 4 attachment points. And then the exhaust here is held with this bracket to the frame with the M10, M10 triple square. So we can remove this bracket, and then we can remove those 4, supporting the weight with our jack here. All right, let's go ahead and we've got some wiring in our way, so we're going to go ahead and pop that off. There's little clips that hold it to the frame, and you just get underneath them with a little flathead screwdriver like that, and just go to pop them off of there. Same for these others that kind of attach to the pan itself. You can just kind of pull them down or use your tool back behind them, but that gives us better access to these bolts here. Go ahead and take up a little bit of the pressure of the weight of the transmission here, and I think I'm going to remove first the exhaust hanger here. Again, that's an M10, M10. See how tight that is. Not bad, not bad at all. If I can break it loose with my electric ratchet, it's not bad at all. Okay, so there's the bracket loose for the exhaust. Now we can get the 4 main bolts for the cradle here. And then it looks like the transmission itself is going to be held to the cradle with a handful of smaller bolts. All right, so once the cradle is unbolted from the frame of the vehicle, it's still going to be bolted to the bottom of the transmission by 4 bolts here that have a nut on them, studs that come through with a 13mm nut on them. So take these 4 13mm nuts loose, and that way the cradle itself can come loose from the bottom of the transmission. All right, let's get these 4 13mm nuts. 13mm nuts. They're not on there very hard, very tight. I'm going to leave one of them on here. That way the cradle, when I get it unbolted from the frame, doesn't just fall on my foot. I'm just going to loosen it up. That way it'll be easy to take down. All right, so now let's get the 4 big bolts that hold this cradle up to the car, those are the M12s. Let's get those out. All right. Let me get a little bit of some of the weight of the transmission on the jack here. Make sure the jack's not going to fall off or whatever you got it supported on back here. Now I can take my M12 to the four corners. And these bolts are the ones that hold it to the frame of the car. Okay, there's the frame bolts. All right, so is this loose? Yeah, loosey-goosey. Hear it clacking around there? All right, so this thing is only held on with this one little 13 that I've still got sort of threaded on here just so it wouldn't fall down. I'm gonna go ahead and remove that last nut, 13 millimeter nut here. Okay, now should be able to drop this cradle down, get the wiring around the edge of it so it doesn't get snagged on it. Okay, and hopefully we can sort of wedge it out sideways here, fish it out a little bit. Okay, make sure that we're not hung up on something, nothing else is attached to it. Looks good, clear. Okay. Oh, okay, there is something attached to it. All right, guys, let me bring you in here and show you what's holding this up. Okay, so in lowering our transmission cross member here, I was noticing it was just giving me a little bit of trouble. And so here's our problem. We've got the looks like a shifter cable here. Is that what this is? Yeah, some kind of shifter cable attached to it with this bolt right up here. So we're going to need to detach this shifter cable from this cradle in order to drop it down. So that's the next step. All right, so let me get this shifter cable out of the way. It's a 10 millimeter. Okay, there we go. I didn't want it to fall. I was a little bit nervous there, but see, I've got it kind of still got this cable underneath here, so it didn't fall. There we go. Okay, so that shifter cable was screwed in here, and then this little grommet goes around that stud right there. So when we go to put it back together, and I'll go ahead and this is kind of this bolt, I think it'll be just fine. I'm going to leave it right there, but you could take it out, screw it in here, or bag and tag it if you wanted to, but that'll be fine out of the way like so. Now, the only thing really holding up this cradle is the wiring that I've got it kind of hanging on. So I'm going to try and get this wiring out around the edge here. That way I can lower it down. Try and do this with one hand for you guys. Oh. All right, sorry about that. All right. Oops. There we go. It's a little bit tough with one hand, but you guys, with both hands, you can do this. No problem. All right, look at that. So now we've got good access to at least a bolt here. Another bolt there, but this thing here needs to come down. So this transmission mount needs to come off in order to get to the bolts way back there in the back. Oh, goodness gracious. They don't make it easy on us, but I tell you, it sure beats paying them to do it. But as you can see, having the support of the weight, everything on this jack right back here on the donut, no problem. It's holding it just fine. This transmission is being held up by that jack now. So the other part of our transmission mount here needs to come down to get access to the last bolt in the very back of this transmission pan. So it's held on with 4 M12, M12 triple squares in these corners. 1, 2, 3, and then one back here. So I'm going to remove those and drop this part of the transmission mount. These bolts are not too terribly tight, so that's good. M12s, 4 of them here. Get them loosened up, and then we'll swap over to our electric ratchet. Just to save us a little bit of time. I know these videos get long, guys, but hopefully you appreciate all the nitty-gritty details that I'm showing, because I want you guys to feel confident that you can do this just like me in your own driveway, garage, whatever. And I really appreciate if you leave me a comment down below or hit that subscribe button so that we can reach a greater audience, help other people save a bunch of money, a bunch of headaches as well. There we go. So there's the last bit of our transmission cross member that was in our way. All right, so we got the transmission cross member completely out of there. Unfortunately, all pieces of it have to be removed in order to get access to these two screws right back here. All right, but we're really starting to see good access now for our transmission fluid filter and fluid filter and fluid change. The only thing left here that's really in our way is going to be this wiring harness. And just like I said earlier, it's held on with all these little clips that kind of grab hold of different things. So just kind of go around and pull those clips loose. And it should just come down away from all of the pieces. You might need to get underneath it with a screwdriver or something like that to loosen up some of them. Yeah, some of these are a little bit trickier. You just might get underneath them with a screwdriver and kind of pry them loose. There we go. All right. So these are all free and clear. We got another one over here. We'll just pull it down. And you can use some bungee or whatever and kind of pull it back away from your work area. I think, let's see, we could detach this portion here from the transmission if we wanted to, in order to get this piece to kind of hang down like that. But I'm a little bit nervous to do that right now because I've still got the battery cable hooked up, and detaching some sensors and things like that can sometimes set off codes that you would then have to clear out. The other thing that I want to do is leave all of this stuff technically attached for right now, because we're going to run the car and see what the level of fill of transmission fluid is right now. This is our overflow plug. This is how you check the level of transmission fluid in one of these ZF type transmissions. You can tell it's a ZF type transmission because the pan will look like this. And this is our drain plug here. And so anytime we're going to drain something, we want to make sure that we can crack the fill plug open first before we drain it. That way we know we can always get the fluid back in it. So before we drain this transmission, I want to see if it has the correct fill of transmission fluid right now to begin with. So the way that we're going to test that is we're going to get it up to the operating temperature, which is between 30 and 50 degrees Celsius. And we're going to remove this plug right here, which is an Allen or hex key size 10. Okay, and then we're going to see if fluid dribbles out of this. If fluid dribbles out of here when it's at operating temperature, then this transmission currently has the correct level of fluid in it. And I'm going to catch the fluid that comes out of it and then measure it. That way we know how much comes out during one of these fluid and filter changes, so that you guys know how much to buy. The kit itself, if you buy it from the FCP Euro, they send us with 7 quarts or liters, I guess in this case, 7 liters. So we'll see how much of that we need. But this is also the way that you test for the level of fluid in your transmission. Is you get it up to operating temperature, you crack this open, take off this fill plug, and you should see a small dribble of fluid coming out of there if it's filled correctly. If you don't see any coming out, then that means it's underfilled. If it gushes out, that means it may be a little overfilled. So we'll get to that here in a moment. All right, so we've got our temperature of the transmission to 41 degrees. It's between 30 and 50. Car is running in park. We're going to come under here and we're going to see, does it already have the correct level of transmission fluid or not. So if I remove this, I should see a trickle of fluid come out. Not a gush. And we want to see some come out. So we see the little bit of trickle, there it is. So this is correctly filled, still from the factory, as we might expect. The car has never been serviced to my knowledge, and it doesn't seem to have any leaks. So it should be filled correctly, and it is. So now we know if we catch what we bring out of this thing, we ought to be able to know how much to put back exactly. All right, so we know that this transmission is filled with the correct amount. So I'm going to go ahead and drain it out now, and I'm going to catch it into this graduated bucket That way we can tell exactly how much fluid gets out of this thing. The way to drain this thing, and again, you don't want to crack that drain plug until you know that that fill plug is going to come loose. We already did that. This is an 8mm hex. Make sure you get the right size. Put in there, nice and gentle pressure to release it. Try and do this with one hand. Sorry, guys. It takes a little bit more time. There we go. A few turns here. And hopefully won't make too big of a mess as we come down, and it'll fall into our bucket. All right. I'm going to set you down here so that I can do this without making too big of a mess. All right, let me get this in here. See if I can't get it undone. There we go. Try and catch as much of the fluid as I can there in the bucket. And as you can see, that fluid doesn't look too terribly bad, really. It's still semi-clear. Hopefully this is going to come through in the film here, but it's still semi-clear and greenish color. Ooh, what a mess. Quit glugging. I guess technically I could remove the fill plug a little bit, but then you're going to get it really gushing out fast. There we go. I just wanted it to get over its glugging so it wouldn't splash all over the place. All right. So far, we got almost a gallon. And for you, my friends across the pond, almost 4 liters over here. There we go. I'll let this drain and I'll bring it back. All right, it's been about 10 minutes and we're down to a drip or so. So I'm gonna go ahead and take the original drain plug and just go ahead and screw it back up into place. That'll keep it from dribbling out anymore while we go around the exterior perimeter of this pan and loosen up all of the screws that hold it up. Those are T40 Torx in order to get those things loose. And so I'll get that started and we'll go around. Now the manufacturer's got a special, crisscross applesauce way of undoing the bolts. I don't pay as much attention to how you undo it as I do in how you torque them when you go back together. But just know that they like for you to go in a crisscross pattern, both unbolting and reinstalling. Okay, I got my T40 on here and we're going to go ahead and go around the horn and break all these things loose and lower it down. Make sure that that Torx bit gets seated nice and deep inside of the bolts, just in case there's some corrosion or dirt up inside of these holes. You want to make sure you clean it out before you try to put that Torx bit up in there. You don't want to strip one of these things out because it could be a real bear to get them out if you had, accidentally stripped one of them. Torx bits are somewhat difficult to deal with once you screw up the Torx portion. There we go. And I'm gonna go ahead and leave everything plugged in. I think I can fish this thing out, no problem, and fish the new one in. It may dribble a little bit of fluid onto this wiring wrap, but ain't no big deal. Nothing we can't handle. All right, so all of these are broke loose, and I'm just gonna lower them down, and I'm gonna try and catch as much of the fluid as I can. So what I'll probably do is try and lower it so that this back end will drop down a little more than the front end, and any fluid that's left in this pan will come dribbling out the back here and hopefully into our bucket. Now, the best laid plans, right? Isn't that what they say, something about it? So I'm gonna go ahead and start with these rear ones. Take them completely out. And this is what they look like. Torx head. And the new kit from FCP Euro comes with new bolts, but I'm going to hold on to these anyways. And since I'm going to drop the back of the pan first, I'm going to remove those bolts first. That way when I start to loosen the ones closer to the front, then the pan itself will drop down in the back. And there's going to be some fluid left in this pan. And remember, the pan is the filter. And there's always fluid left in the filter, right guys? Okay. All right, now that I have all of the rear bolts out, it'll start to drop as I loosen up these front ones. So I want to make sure that I do this kind of slowly and evenly so that as it starts to drain, we can catch all the goodies. Okay, I'll go ahead and remove these two. All right, so it's pretty loose. Not a lot of stuff coming out of it, so that's a good sign. All right, next. Okay. Okay. Remove this one. All right, we ought to really see it drop down a little bit now. Not yet. All right. That's probably because there's an O-ring on that filter that's got it stuck up into the bottom of the valve body, and so it doesn't just want to drop down willy-nilly. Go ahead and remove these bolts. I'm keeping my hand on it so that it doesn't just fall, pop loose. All right, we got any left? One more. Keeping some pressure on it. Okay, I think that's all the bolts. Let me set down this tool. All right, here we go. Okay, I'm feeling that O-ring work its way out. There it goes. Now let's see if we can catch all the fluid. There we go. Yeah. Now this is going to be good. We're catching the majority of this fluid here, guys. As you can see, we're catching the majority of this fluid. So we'll be getting a good measure of what it takes to drain and refill. All right. So we've let her drain here for a second. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of weasel it out around this wiring harness. There we go. And try to pour out the rest, catch any drippings. Let's see if I can turn this around so you guys can see what I'm doing here. Just pouring out a little bit of what's left in this pan. Not a whole lot of room that I've left myself here, so I'm gonna go ahead and take it down and over to the bench. I'll take you there in a sec. Okay, so there's the pan drop, the filter drop, and that filter snaps right up into here with an O-ring. So reach up in here and make sure that that O-ring is not stuck in this bore and in the way of the new one going back in there. And make sure that your O-ring came out with your filter. Looks like that. In this case, it's a blue one. And yeah, it's a good thing that we're doing this. Let me get some light on the subject so you can really see down inside of that filter. All right, so you can see down inside of that filter there, a little bit of grit and trash down in there. And then over here, we've got our little magnets. And let's take a look and see what's caught on our magnets. Yeah, there's a normal wear and tear is fine. You want to see some of that, or it's going to be fine if you see that shiny black material or whatever. You just don't want to see any chunks. You don't want to see any pieces of metal on here. But that gooey black graphite, that's just fine and dandy. That's very normal. All right, let's get the last dregs of this fluid out of this pan here, filter and pan. We'll just drain it out. That way we're catching as much as we can. We're never going to get all of it out of here. You can see there's some fluid still trapped in that filter right there. We're never going to get every little bit out of these things, but that's okay. We're going to be real close. on our refill. This just helps us to understand how much we need to put back in to this transmission in order to get it back where it was. And we tested before we took it out there if it was filled correctly, and it was. And so we have drained so far, about 5 quarts, maybe a little over 5 quarts. This table's a little wonky. A little over 5 quarts. And for you guys that like the metric system, let's call it a little over 4, maybe 4.5 liters. All right, so we're just going to let this thing drip for a little while. As you can see, we've got some drips every now and then, but that's not going to add up to a significant volume of additional fluid that I'm not capturing in my bucket. So don't have to worry about, oh my, well, you let it drip too long, and what if it dripped, another 2 quarts or a liter or whatever. No, it dripped, I don't know, a few milliliters, not that much, not that big of a deal. So we'll go ahead and we're going to clean up this surface, this edge of the pan really good. There'll be a little bit of oxidation on that aluminum there, and you want that surface to be nice and flat and good and clean before you put the new pan on. And the pan has just a little rubber or silicone gasket on it, and so we don't need any RTV or anything like that. And the pan has that gasket formed into the edge of it. So we'll clean up the surface and get it ready for that new pan/filter.